operational value of the data that's being pulled. Now, the operational value is awareness of specifics of what's going on in the business. So this would be practical. The practical applications of this would be revenue per user. This can vary across the different games. Certain games, they cost a certain amount when you first purchase them, and there's a monthly subscription fee. Other games, specific on the mobile side, are more based on microtransactions, where you're purchasing different amounts here and there, but there's no actual subscription fee or no cost to purchase the game initially. But knowing how much revenue per user you're gaining, and that can inform if the goal would be to grow user base or go back to the strategic value idea and see if maybe it's more about, let's focus on these specific items or these specific places where folks are more likely to spend their money. Subscription totals overall, right? This can both be for paid subscriptions and for unpaid subscriptions, meaning for paid subscriptions, who is actually paying the $15 a month for World of Warcraft, and for unpaid subscriptions, it's login information, right? Like how frequently are users logging in? Are we getting folks logging in every day, every week, every month, twice a year, and how does that translate into some of our other revenue pieces? Peak usage and subscription timeframes. When within the arc of different games are folks logging in? That could both be in a kind of a micro setting of what time of day do folks log in? Where are folks more likely to be playing within their days, as well as how within the game's scope of how long it's been out, or how developed it is, or how close it is to a new expansion with new content coming out. When are those subscriptions really waxing and waning? When are they increasing and decreasing? And knowing that information and being able to analyze that data can inform where there is opportunity to avoid some of those waning subscription times, or some of those opportunity to push things that'll benefit folks who would maybe log in or play in some of the less popular times, if you will. Microtransaction data. This not every Blizzard game is tied specific to microtransactions, but most of them are. A microtransaction is a small purchase made throughout the game that often enhances gameplay. Frequently, they're cosmetic in nature, so they don't actually make a character better or faster or stronger, but it's kind of the cool factor of having this thing that somebody else doesn't have, or having this thing that is more unique or more personal. And so knowing what are the most common or the more frequently purchased microtransactions, and how does that make sense, and how can folks continue to leverage, or how can we continue to leverage as a business, we being Blizzard, a business into effective and ethical, which we'll discuss later, use of microtransaction data. So all of these pieces tie together with an operational value. It supports the basic bottom and top line information on the company. Another way that Activision Blizzard uses big data and data mining specifically within its strategic plan is community data mining. And this is specific to the World of Warcraft public test realm. So when there are when there's new content that's going to come out for the World of Warcraft, or new builds, new items, new quests, new pieces to the game, it's put out onto a public test realm where anybody can log in and play before it's actually live in the game itself. And within that public test realm, and within technologies that exist in this day and age, folks are allowed to data mine the information. So as soon as a new PTR, public test realm build, is put up onto the server, immediately there are websites and companies all over the place that are data mining every piece of that information to find out what's changing, what's coming that's new, what are the pieces of the story that's coming on. And Blizzard intentionally does this. It allows for there to be excitement built. It allows for information and transparency with how the game is being run and how the game is going to develop and grow. It encourages depth involvement in the game for community members. So for some folks that like to go beyond gameplay, right? They like to see the inner workings of the game and really understand the pieces that are going into that. It can allow for that as well. They've also been known to plant Easter eggs and red herrings into the public test realms, meaning they'll plant stuff that's just there to be data mined, to be funny or silly or just kind of quirky. That's kind of Blizzard's sense of humor about these pieces. And then because they also don't want to spoil every single piece of what's to come, they also put red herrings in where they're, for example, we'll put pieces of the storyline for the upcoming expansions into place that don't necessarily follow through when it goes live, so folks aren't given every piece of information kind of to keep the excitement there. So there's a lot of positive reaction from the community surrounding the ability to data mine and all the information that's available, but there's also some negative reaction from folks. It removes kind of that sense of wonder, that excitement of knowing what's to come versus just new content coming out, and then folks being able to immediately dive in and go for, hey, I know I want to get this dragon fight, I want to ride this specific horse because I know it already exists within the data of the game. So this kind of curtails into our first discussion question, and that is specific to the quantitative focus on the gameplay experience, some of that strategic value that I spoke to before, ruining the gameplay experience in the long term for folks. Currently, in 2019, Blizzard is laying off employees. They're losing subscribers. They are not growing quite as quickly as they had in the past. And some folks have pointed to the fact that because Blizzard has become so good at using data and using business intelligence to inform gameplay decisions, that they've made it almost mechanical in nature. So a lot of these games are fantasy-based, right? There's dragons and quests and things that people want to experience, and the wonder and awe and all of that is a big part of that experience for folks. And because it's become almost formulaic, that Blizzard has determined this is how people want to play, it's turned into kind of just an endless grind where the pleasure that actually is involved in playing is fading away for people, because while Blizzard has identified where these points are and like how people do want to play, because it's become so regimented and they've become so good at it, they are losing subscribers, right? It's less of this giant world or these giant worlds that people are wandering around in or experiencing the depth of gameplay, and more of just going through these same sequence of events that have been proven by data to be the way that people want to play. But now that the awareness and the knowledge piece of that is there, some people argue that that's not necessarily appealing, or at least now that it's out in the open, right, that the appeal of it is less. Some people also argue that while that might be valid, some of it is just that a lot of Blizzard's titles have been out for a long time. World of Warcraft being one example. It's been out since I think 04 or 05. So after 14 or 15 years, any game can become a little bit stale. Some of the newer titles like Overwatch are very, very popular as they push into esports and some of those other venues. But still, some of the question around the quantitative focus on the gameplay experience and how that is kind of changing the way that we see gaming as a whole, right? And we're just kind of distilling that experience down to minimizing and maximizing efficiencies within the game and efficiencies within how people want to experience the game. And that makes people, in some cases, not want to game as much. The second discussion question is specific to microtransactions, and there's a debate going on, not just surrounding Blizzard's microtransactions, but a lot of things like loot boxes and other pieces within mobile gaming of whether or not microtransactions are ethically questionable, given their potential to be addictive in nature. And I think this is tied not just to gaming within children, but most specifically, this question surrounds that. A lot of times kids are playing games like Candy Crush or playing games like World of Warcraft or Overwatch or Fortnite as we expand out beyond the Blizzard realm. And there are perks to be had for dollar amounts. And it can feel in certain ways that this is similar to gambling. It can feel in certain ways that you have to have those things now, and when something like a credit card or a parent's credit card is tied specifically to an account, it's really easy just to click that button and purchase more and more microtransactions. So there's been some accusations of companies like Activision Blizzard of exploiting the nature of these small 50-cent dollar transactions, $5 transactions, which seem harmless when they're in a micro state, but when you start looking at them in big picture and the tendencies and traits of purchases and behaviors of players, whether or not microtransactions are something that is essential, something that is certainly good for business, but something that is going to be more regulated heavily as the determinations are made about how unhealthy or healthy it is for game players, especially, like I spoke to, game players who are minors under 18. That's all I have for Activision Blizzard. The references are here, and I think overall, video game companies specifically, because there is such a wealth of data readily available, and because a lot of people who have a gaming background are coming from a data-oriented background, from a minimizing and maximizing background, that there is just a huge push to use that data in the most effective ways possible. And I think Activision Blizzard has one of the most advanced and utilizes some of the best BI practices that I have seen in my research. I think they really understand, for better or for worse, the tendencies of their players, what people like to do, where people push towards, how to balance games out, how to make sure that competitive balance is maintained. And they do so much in all of this through their analysis and usage of big data and data mining. So appreciate y'all taking the time to listen, and have a great rest of your evening.